Okay, so the big question that everyone struggles with at some point in their life is, what is my purpose? What is my dream? What do I want to do with my life? Why was I put here? And the secret to this question is that there is no answer, because this answer is so unique to the individual that only the individual can find it. But this is not as easy as it sounds. We need to sit with our purest thoughts and desires in a quiet area with no interruptions and just think. But to do this, we need resources that are currently really scarce in our society. These two resources, time and attention, are being actively stolen from us, which makes it impossible for us to find our true goal. So in this video, I'm going to talk about these two large forces, right? These invisible forces that exist without our awareness, and they manipulate us and they guide us into doing things that we don't actually want to do. I'm going to quickly talk about how and why these forces exist, and how they affect our ability to use our time and our attention, which in turn affects our ability to find our purpose. So if that sounds interesting to you, let's get started. Unfortunately, our time is a lot more scarce than we think. Think about it this way. Some people want to use every second of their day productively, right? They wake up really early, and between 6 and 7 a.m., they get their workout in, they get a self-care routine in, they get meditation in, they get some learning in for the day. And after that, they figure, I can focus the rest of my day on doing productive work. But what does productivity mean? Does it mean keeping a textbook open or keeping your work laptop open and scrolling through Instagram for 4 hours? Because inevitably, that's what a lot of people end up doing. Because you've rushed in the first hour of the day to do anything that is actually meaningful to your body, and you spent the rest of the day doing what society deems as productive while being equally distracted from your task. Because paradoxically, the only thing that's more scarce than our time is our attention. This is where we get stuck in this loop where we're constantly jumping back and forth between I want to be productive and I want to get a lot of stuff done, and I need something to distract myself from all this overwhelming stimulation. And this is where people start the blame game. They start blaming themselves. I need to get more disciplined. I need to be smarter. I need to work harder. I need to do this. I need to do that. But they never ask themselves, why can't I do what I need to do or what I want to do? So the first thing to acknowledge before we get started is that this is not your fault. It's not a time management problem, and it's not an attention management problem. It's not an individual problem. There are forces much greater than you, outside of your awareness, that are kind of guiding your behaviors. These are the forces that we're going to start talking about now, so let's get into it. The first force is what I call the push force. And this can be summarized as anything that pushes you to do better, to work harder, to reach greater goals. This push force uses a reward system that I call the MPS triangle, which is basically money, power, and status. So how does this push force work? It actually starts a long time ago, back when we were little kids. When we're in school, we're subtly nudged towards aiming for MPS. We're asked about our dream job or how we're going to impact the world. These are not natural thoughts for kids. They've been synthetically and slowly implanted into a growing and developing mind. As we grow a little bit older, new pressures start coming in, right? There's pressure from the school to do well on your exams. There's pressure from your family to get a good career and make a lot of money. There's pressure from your friends to stay competitive. And all these pressures start replacing what you want to do with what you think you need to do to be a good citizen, to be a functioning member of society. And in college, we get stuck in this race of trying to pad our resume, trying to do internships, trying to join clubs just so that they'd look good to an employer. And all of these things take our attention and time away from what we actually want to do, something that we've totally forgotten by this point just because it's been ingrained in us that we have things that need to be done. So let's jump back to today. Maybe you're working your dream job, right? But that strive for MPS is still there. I want to climb the corporate ladder. I want to make more money. I want my friends to feel like they respect me. I want this. I want that. But do you actually want it? This is the power of the push force, right? It instills in you what I call an infinite want, a want that can never be satisfied. You can think of it like there's a treadmill and there's a carrot in front of the treadmill, and you're running on the treadmill to reach this carrot. The carrot will never be reached. This MPS carrot will never be in your possession, because no matter what goal you reach, this arbitrary goalpost will always keep moving. You can always be richer. You can always be more powerful. You can always be more respected. And because of this, you will never have any of these things. And no matter how far you've run, there's always an infinite distance ahead of you. So somewhere along the way, you start realizing that this MPS carrot is always out of my reach. I'm not able to reach it anymore. No matter how much I get, it's not enough. I'm tired and I want to step off the treadmill. But you can't, because while you weren't looking, someone has handcuffed your hand to the railing. So one example of a handcuff is, let's say in college, you want to get a really high-paying job and you've been convinced that a college degree is the only way to do so. Even if you can't afford it, you go into a lot of student debt to achieve this goal. Once you're out of college, you find a job and you start working. Maybe you realize that this job isn't for you. Maybe you realize that you want to do something else, something more creative or something closer to your heart. But you can't do it because it doesn't pay you enough to pay off your loans. You're handcuffed to the treadmill and you need to keep running until those loans are paid off. Most debt actually has this one purpose. It is a mechanism of the push force. Maybe you have a mortgage on a house that's much bigger than you actually need. Or maybe you have a car loan on a really fancy car so people will look at it and they'll respect you. Or maybe you have a lot of credit card debt because you buy a lot of things that you don't really need and then you have to spend the rest of your life paying them off. A lot of people realize this too late in their life. They've already committed to some sort of loan or some sort of debt. This feeling can be a little bit overwhelming and it can cause someone to spiral. They might start looking for a distraction. They might stop running on their treadmill just to be pulled into a different treadmill completely. So the push force in summary is a force of production. It replaces your actual wants and desires with a strive for money, power, and status, which in turn maximize production. I want to monetize every single second to produce. This is where this hustle culture comes from and this want to grind. But that's just one half of this equation. Wherever there's overproduction, there has to be overconsumption. So this force of consumption is the second force, the pull force. And the pull force is something I describe as anything that pulls you away from reality through distraction. And the main reward that the pull force uses is pleasure or synthetic pleasure. So how does this pull force work? Well, it also starts at a very young age. Maybe in school you're surrounded by all your friends who have the latest and greatest toys and gadgets, and you ask your parents for these toys and gadgets. Or maybe you're overwhelmed by academics and you need a small distraction, so you want to buy a gaming console. Or maybe you're someone that prefers to watch TV, and while you watch TV, all these ads start popping up for things that you can buy, and you start pestering your parents for it. Now you've started growing up, and you're surrounded by more and more pressures, more and more overwhelm. You need something to dull the pain, to distract you. Alcohol, drugs, smoking, anything to calm an active and overthinking mind. Now, as an adult, all of these wants still exist. You still want to consume media. You still want to keep up with your friends. You still want to buy things just to show off to other people. You still have vices such as alcohol and smoking. The newest phones, the fastest cars, the most expensive shoes. Nothing is making you happy. This is also another infinite want treadmill, because none of these needs for pleasure, for real pleasure and real happiness, can be satisfied by all of these products. Because if you think about it, around the world, there are psychologists and behavioral scientists whose sole purpose, their entire job, is to build a product that synthetically makes you desire it as much as possible. So you will consume it as much as possible, so they can make as much money as possible. They are experts on how your mind works. They can pull all the little strings in your brain to make you synthetically want their products. They can target you with very specific ads. They can induce a desire in you that didn't exist before. But humans are smart, right? They'll eventually figure out that we're not able to get this actual pleasure or happiness that we're searching for through this product. So the pull force also has its own trap mechanism. But instead of handcuffs, the pull force treadmill speeds up the more you try to get off of it. For vices, it usually comes in the form of withdrawal symptoms. You know, when you try to quit alcohol or quit drugs, you have this want, this need to go back to it. For social media, it comes in the form of FOMO, right? The fear of missing out, the fear of not being able to keep up with your friends and to keep up with this fast-paced world. Every vice has its own built-in mechanism to keep you running on this infinite want treadmill. So now you're trapped, right? These small bursts of pleasure from alcohol and drugs and social media and video games are all followed by periods of shame. You start thinking, what am I doing with my life? What has my life come to? Maybe one day you've decided this is it. I'm going to start being a productive human being. I'm going to start being disciplined. We're going to stop running on this treadmill. But where does productivity get us? It gets us back to the push force. It gets us back to treadmill number one. So the pull force, in summary, is the force of consumption, right? It completes this economic push and pull. And the economy is the reason why these two forces exist. We need people to spend their entire life producing things and spend the other entire life consuming the same things that they're producing. The more people get underpaid to produce and the more they overpay to consume things, the more the money starts flowing upstream to the rich. So I hope it's kind of clear by now that these two forces actually do exist in some kind of metaphorical sense. And they are affecting us and manipulating us without us realizing it. But now the question is, how do they affect our time and our attention? Why are we not able to answer the question, what do I actually want? So how it affects our time is actually a pretty easy question to answer. We're spending our entire lives switching between these two treadmills. We're literally running for our life. We don't have time to reflect on our wants and our purpose. And without time to reflect, we don't know what we want. And without knowing what we want, we'll always default to the easiest choice, which is either go and produce things at my job or go and consume things at the mall. The effect on our attention is something that's a little bit harder to grasp because it happens over a longer time frame. The more we overwork ourselves and overproduce, the more we're stuck in this high stress environment. And high stress has been obviously shown to reduce our ability to pay attention. It reduces our willpower, which means it reduces our ability to pull ourselves away from our temptations. The stress from overproduction then leads to overconsumption because we're no longer able to resist our vices. So we get distracted by the pleasurable pulls of junk food and social media and alcohol when all of these further reduce our attention. And when we can't pay attention and we can't focus on what we actually want, we will default to the two most basic choices. Either go to my job and start overproducing, or go to the mall and start overconsuming. The real kicker here is that these effects are not on an individual level, they're on a societal level. And when a society loses its ability to think and its ability to focus, it starts losing its ability to unite and tackle big problems like global warming. Unfortunately, the result of a society that's always running for its life is an individual that has no sense of self. When people ask you to tell them about yourself, what do you say? What do you start with? Most people start with their job. They say, I'm an engineer, I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer. I am my work. I am my ability to produce. Now the other person says, no, that's not what I mean. I mean, what do you do in your free time? This becomes an uncomfortable question for you. You might jokingly say, free time? Who has free time anymore? Or you might say, I just chill and relax, when in reality all you do is scroll through social media or watch a movie that you don't really want to be watching. Because you don't know what you actually want, because you've never had the time and attention to sit down and to focus and think about what you actually want. And again, this is not your fault. Your attention and time have been stolen from you. So before I end this video, I want to add a couple of disclaimers here. I know this topic is a little bit uncomfortable to talk about and to hear about, because a lot of videos have this privileged take of money isn't everything, just quit your job, live your life, travel, do whatever you want kind of thing. But they tend to forget that a lot of people unfortunately don't have that choice. There are people in the world whose best option is to work hard at a job so they can make enough money to pay for their children's tuition and to give their kids a life that's meaningful and to give themselves a life that is comfortable. So if you fall under this category and you're watching this video, please don't be mad. You are not the intended audience for this video. Now, if you've watched this video, you've sat down, you've thought about it, and you basically realized, you know what, I really love my job. And in my free time, all I want to do is watch TV. There's nothing else that I want to do. That is totally okay. And that's all I need from this video. All I need is for you to sit down and have a think, right? Like just think about things. Because you can use your time however you want to use your time. The only thing to be aware of is whether these push and pull forces are changing what you think you want to do. That is all. So now you might ask me, Surya, how do I stop running? How do I escape these two treadmills that have been placed back to back? And how do I stop just swinging back and forth between them? And the truth is, I don't actually know. I'm stuck in the same treadmill that you're stuck in. I still worry sometimes about whether I'll have enough money to be comfortable, whether I can provide for my family. And I still get distracted and overwhelmed. But the good thing is that we have the first step here. The first step is awareness. We can see those once invisible forces. We know that people are pulling the strings in our mind. Now all we need to do is fight back. Thank you for watching this video. I really hope it gave you something to think about. And over the course of my channel, I'm sure that we will together come up with some kind of solution that'll help us live a more fulfilling life that is closer to our heart. That's all I've got for today, and I'll catch you on the next one. Goodbye.